What's up, people? It's pretty late and I'm pretty tired, but I just wanted to hop on and make a quick video. I was actually on someone else's channel and I found out that there was some recent filings on this Nicki Minaj, Kenneth Petty, Jennifer Hugh fiasco. And you know what? I just wanted to come out and just say I was wrong, right? Sometimes people make mistakes, sometimes people miscalculate, and sometimes people just come to, logic that just doesn't work out. And in this case, I'm just going to say that the conclusions I made were solid, but I didn't factor in the possibility that the process server could be a moron, right? So let me just go ahead and read this to you. So, and actually, I'm not even going to read all this to you because it's just going to be boring. I'm just going to skip to the part where it's going to be relevant. So this is the declaration of Robert Diaz. He is the process server who was said to have given the paperwork, the legal paperwork, over to Kenneth Petty, right? So we're going to start on line 3. On September 15, 2021, I made a second attempt to serve Mr. Petty and Mrs. Mirage at their Calabasas, California estate. It goes on September 15, 2021 at 6:28 Pacific time, I successfully served Mr. Petty in my second attempt with a summons and a complaint for himself and one for Mrs. Minaj. Additionally, I was provided a photo of Mr. Petty and the plaintiff attorney, Tyrone Blackburn, right? And basically, long story told, the photo that was provided was just an internet photo that millions of people have seen. And I probably have it up on my channel as well. I think it's up on probably one of the first or second videos I've done, right? So there's nothing special about the photo. And he goes on, when I approached the Calabasas, California estate, I was greeted by a Caucasian female security officer. I identified myself as a registered process server, registration number 5681, and informed her I was there to serve a summons and complaint on Mr. Petty and Mrs. Mirage. The security officer confirmed the residence of Mr. Petty and Mrs. Mirage was 2348 Park Colombo, basically where they live, right? So the security officer basically confirmed the address, right? And then she basically goes on, or he goes on, he says, when I approached the residence, I noticed two vehicles parked in the driveway. One was a red Range Rover and the other one was a black Range Rover, right? And it goes on, I approached the door and rang the doorbell. No one answered. I waited 20 minutes and I knocked on the door. I returned to the security officer at the front where I heard her speaking on the phone with Mr. Petty. Mr. Petty was yelling at her because he was upset she let me into the compound. He said she was supposed to call him first before letting me in. After hearing this, I returned to the residence, knocked on the door again. This time, I saw a figure staring at me through the window. I knew it was Mr. Petty because the security guard informed me that he was indeed in the home. He refused to open the door. I then announced myself and informed him that he had been served. I showed him the two documents and left them outside the front door. As stated in proof of service, Mr. Petty is a black male, approximately 40 years old, approximately 200 pounds, approximately 5'10", and he has black hair with brown eyes, right? And he provides a photo. I declare under penalty of perjury that the proceeding is true and correct. And it says executed October 27, 2021. Now, you know what? There are some parts that I didn't read, right? The parts that I didn't read, basically this guy says that he has been a process server. I guess I have to go back and read it. I have personal knowledge of the facts. No, hold on a second. I'm 37 years old, a grown man, and I have worked as a process server for 10 years. So he's a grown man and he's worked as a process server for 10 years. So first, let me just go ahead and admit that I was wrong, right? So now that I admit that I was wrong, they were not served, right? Because I made a video and I said, proving to such and such, I think it's Black T Blog and somebody else, that Nicki Minaj and her boyfriend was served. And when I made that video, I made it with the understanding that, number one, process servers generally don't lie, right? And number two, process servers have reasonable intelligence. And then number three, that anytime you give a legal document to anyone in the household, right, a resident of that household that is above 18 years of age, then that person, the person you're intending to serve, is deemed to have been served. So that was the foundation at which I based my argument on in the last video. And again, I just want to make it clear that I'm admitting that I was wrong, right? But it's worth kind of going through this so you can understand how tricky this is. And let me just say, not only was I wrong, I don't see any judge who is actually going to allow someone to get a default judgment against them for $20,000 when the person who was responsible for serving them basically served a shadowy figure, right? We don't know who the shadow figure is, right? And basically his description of the person, he said I knocked on the door again. I returned to the residence and knocked on the door again. This time I saw a figure staring at me through the window, right? You know, so here's a problem with this. We don't know how old that person is, right? That person has to be at least 18. And actually, I thought it was a little bit younger. And actually, if I go back to the federal lawsuit, I mean, the federal process serving law, it's probably a little bit less than 18, right? You know, so I'm probably reading conflicting information, but it's probably anyone that's a teenager and up, right? But in this situation, we don't know the age of this figure, right? We don't know who this figure is, right? It's just a shadowy figure. So for all we know, it could have been a kid. It could have been, you know, a really tall kid who's like 12 years old, right? And that's not going to fly. It could have been a cleaning person, right? Someone responsible for cleaning the place, right? It could have been anybody, right? We don't know that the person lived in a residence, which I think is one of the requirements, right? And we don't know the age of the individual. We don't know who this individual is, right? All we know is that he saw a shadowy figure, and that is not going to fly when it comes down to putting a default judgment on someone for $20 million. It's just not going to fly, right? And then he goes on and he says, I knew it was Mr. Petty because the security guard informed me that he was indeed in the home. He refused to open the door. Then I announced myself and informed him that he had been served, and I showed him the 2 documents and left them outside of the front door, right? So this is his claim. This is his claim. So someone, and this is where it gets kind of gray, because here's the thing. California, they actually have a law, and these things differ from state to state. But in California, the general law is that if I see you, and let's say you're in a car, for example, and I see you and I run up to your car, you notice me, and I say, hey, look, you know, you're being served. I have 2 legal documents which you need in order to go to court. And upon hearing that, you raise your window, and then I put the documents on your windshield and you just drive off, then you would be deemed to have been served, because you can't avoid a process server. And that's the general law in California. So it gets tricky. And again, I've already admitted that basically they were not served, right? Kenny nor Nicki were not served. And I'm already admitting that I was wrong, right? But setting that aside, it's kind of funny because in California, the law is that you can't avoid service. So if someone comes to your door and they say, hey, you're being served, I need you to open the door so that I can give you these, you know, these court documents, and you say no, then you would have been deemed to have been served, because you can't avoid or refuse service, right? But the problem here is that he didn't identify the man as Kenny. That's the problem. And to me, it looks like he's being a little disingenuous, because he never says that it was Kenny. He always says that he saw a shadowy figure, and then he tries to play games At the end, he says, as stated in proof of service, Mr. Petty is a black male, approximately 40 years old, approximately 200 pounds, approximately 5'10", and he has black hair and brown eyes. But he doesn't say, this is who I saw. He doesn't say, it would be cool if he said, I saw through the window a black male, approximately 40 years old, 200 pounds, and he was 5'10", and his hair was he had black hair and brown eyes. He would be good if he said that's what he saw, but he's not saying that's what he saw. I don't know. So this is where it's tricky, because we need to get this guy to court to testify so he can clear up some things. And I think it's just game. I think the guy is gaming probably Tyrone Blackburn, or him and Tyrone Blackburn is trying to game the courts. But it's really just going to be a waste of time, right? And if I were Tyrone Blackburn, I would just drop the whole thing and I would just go ahead and proceed with basically going to court and trying to prove the case. Me personally, I still think that there's a strong case here, and I would focus on that route, because this is going to be a waste of everybody's time. And I think Jennifer can't afford to pay Tyrone, if she's even paying. But even if she's not paying, Tyrone Blackburn, well, let me say it this way. Jennifer can't afford to pay Tyrone Blackburn to run back and forth to court over nonsense like this. And Tyrone Blackburn can't afford to go back and forth to court thinking he's going to win on nonsense like this, right? You know, so it becomes an expensive play that's just going to be costly at the end. In my personal opinion, when you do little silly stuff like this and you're nitpicking and you're trying to fight silly stuff like this when it clearly says that he saw a shadowy figure, but never once does he say that this shadowy figure resembled Mr. Petty, or he doesn't say this shadow figure was a black male, approximately 40 years old, 200 pounds, 5'10", black hair and brown eyes. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say anything like that. You know, so he doesn't tie these things together. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Like I said, I've already pointed out to you that the law in California is that you cannot avoid service, meaning if I knock on your door and you look out through your glass and I can see that it's you, and I can see as a person that's supposed to be served, and I say, you know, hey, Mr. Petty, I have these legal documents, and basically you're being summoned to come to court, you know, so I'm just going to leave these documents here, and you're served, right? That would qualify as a service if I actually identified that it was indeed Mr. Petty, right? Because again, in California, a person cannot avoid a court summons, and a person cannot avoid, he cannot refuse a court summons. So once the process server sees you and he clearly communicates to you that you're being served, then that's it. It's over, right? You got to go to court, right? But here, again, we don't know who the shadowy figure is. So it gets interesting, because this could be a situation where and I'm not saying it is. Again, I've already admitted I was wrong. Nicki and Kenny have not been served. So let's just make that clear. However, I want to reserve the possibility that I was maybe right? And basically, what we don't know is whether or not Tyrone Blackburn is just a horrible writer, or the process server is a poor communicator, because he's clearly putting this information in here, giving a clear description of what Mr. Petty looks like. And he clearly says that, you know, he believes that he served him, right? He basically says that Mr. Petty was yelling at her because she was upset that she let me into the compound. He said that she was supposed to call him first before letting me in. After hearing this, I returned to the residence and knocked on the door again. This time I saw a shadowy figure. I knew it was Mr. Petty because the security guard informed me that, yeah, this is just too sketchy, because he doesn't give any positive identification that is actually Mr. Petty. I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, there still could be a chance, but only if the process server actually saw Mr. Petty and he's willing to come to court and testify on oath that it was indeed Mr. Petty that he served, right? And of course, I think one of the, and I haven't, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I haven't actually read the defense of Nicki Minaj, but I think if I can remember correctly, don't quote me, that Nicki Minaj said allegedly that they were not even in California at the time, right? So it would come down to a he said, she said situation. So if he comes to court and he says, oh, well, that was written poorly, that wasn't written correctly, I actually saw Mr. Petty, and basically this is how he looked. He was a black male, approximately 40 years old, blah, 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 right? Then there's a chance that basically could hold up in court, right? But at the end of the day, I just think it's all BS because of the way it's worded. To me, it looks like they're trying to play around with the wording of this thing to make it looks like they've been served. And again, if the guy hasn't been served, then this is all just a complete waste of time. And like I said, Tyrone Blackburn can't afford to run back and forth to court to argue on petty stuff like this, because typically, these trials, they can last for years. And if you're going to go and argue petty stuff like this, when it's clear the way this thing has been written that Mr. Petty wasn't served, then it's going to be a pretty expensive process. And if Tyrone Blackburn is coming out of his own pocket, what's called a contingency, or at least that's what I call it, whereby you're representing a person and that person doesn't have to pay anything. They only pay if they win, or you get a bigger chunk of the proceeds if that person wins. Then Tyrone Blackburn can be in the hole big time, because he's going to spend a lot of time fighting over stuff like this, and it's just not worth it. His time would be better spent subpoenaing, getting subpoenas for the phone records. It would be better spent questioning the witnesses, and it would be better spent filing solid motions and things of that nature, and going to court to argue on solid things, not petty stuff like this. So that's it as far as that's concerned. There's lots of other, I guess, updates. So here's the actual photo that was given to him, right? So there's other updates, and we're not going to get through all of this, right? So this is Tyrone Blackburn's declaration. I'm not even going to get into this. I don't even have time. Maybe I'll get into it another time. If somebody really wants me to get into it, I'll get into it. And then there's lots of things that was actually filed here, but again, I don't have time to go through all of this stuff. There are some things that were interesting. So in other videos, I think I did a live somewhere, and I think Vanderveer said they have pictures of Kenny throwing up gang signs, and I guess this is one of those pictures, right? And I'm not sure where the gang sign. He's like, other people are holding up gang signs, but I don't see. I think that's Kenny, right? But I don't see him holding up a gang sign. And in this picture, here he is again. I don't even see him holding up a gang sign. Here's another picture. Yeah, I don't see Kenny holding up gang signs at all, right? I mean, he's affiliated with these guys, right? Because he's hanging out with them, taking pictures, but I don't see him throwing up gang signs. And the reason the gang signs would be important is because he is basically, I'm just going to say he's an offender. And because he's an offender, he has to basically keep his image clean, right? Bottom line. And I'm trying to carve out some time so that we can look at his bond requirements, right? And basically, I'm going to say this doesn't look good for him, right? You can hang out with whoever you want to hang out, but if you're throwing up gang signs, then it wouldn't look good for you, right? That's what I meant to say. So these pictures don't really say anything, in my personal opinion. Everybody else is, and Nicki Minaj is looking like a a little fatty though. She looked like she putting a little pounds on, but I still love her. And as soon as her and Kenny break up, I'm sure what a real man is like. But that's neither here nor there, right? But yeah, so I don't see Kenny throwing up gang signs. But if he was throwing up gang signs, then that would be probably bad for him because he has to report to the court. He is effectively a ward of the state. They have complete control over you because you took a plea deal, and because you took a plea deal, you have to report in. So the state has control on you over you. They can at any time probably, for good cause, right? For good cause at any time, they could basically lock you up. And I wouldn't want to give them any ammunition to lock me up, right? So, and then there's another photo. And here is some text, right? That's on some type of chat, some type of notification. I did go through this, but I don't see how. I'm not even going to talk on this, but basically it says, Jennifer, if you see this, the Macs are coming to get you, right? And I think this is referenced in Tyrone Blackburn's declaration, which I'm not even going to read just as of yet. So, and then there's more documentation here, and I don't even know what this is. And yet even more documentation. No, this is an exhibit. I don't even know what that is. And again, I'm running through this stuff, y'all. So I haven't really gotten a chance to sit down and make sense of all this. I don't know that I will make sense of all this because I have lots of videos to make. But again, if there is a request and maybe a nice little donation, I'll go through this stuff. But, right now I'm just kind of swamped with a lot of personal stuff. And I still have other videos that I need to do, right? Another declaration. This time the declaration is by Jennifer Hugh. And you know what? Let me just say something for the last time. People are looking at the Clubhouse interviews. They're looking at the interview with, what's his name? Armand Wiggins. And the interview with The View, or whatever that show is with all the ladies on it, right? And they're saying she's debunking her own story. They're saying she's contradicting herself. Blah, 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 blah. Let me just tell you guys, I've watched most of those interviews and I've skimmed over the ones that I haven't fully watched. And personally, I can tell you that my personal opinion is that she hasn't said anything in any of those interviews that would debunk her lawsuit. She never claimed that Black was acting as an agent of Kenny or acting as an agent of Nicki. She never claimed that Nicki or Kenny directly threatened her, right? And these are some of the things that people are pointing out. And it's like each time somebody notices something, a trivial little thing, they'll point that out and say, oh, well, she didn't say that in the lawsuit. Guys, just stop it. Please stop. For the most part, her lawsuit is consistent with everything that she says on those broadcasts, right? And if you don't believe it, then I challenge you to go live with me and prove it. You bring the interview of which you think she basically debunked her own lawsuit, or you bring the interview in which you think she's contradicting herself, and I'll bring the lawsuit to prove that she didn't. At this point, there are going to be little inconsistencies in the story, just like there would be if anybody else told the story, right? And just because she makes a mistake or she gets something wrong doesn't mean she's lying. I don't believe the woman is lying. I believe the woman is genuine. She reported the assault as soon as it happened. She took the rape. She took the, I said the R word. She took the R kit as soon as it happened. And I genuinely believe her. Everybody can't be lying. And it just seems funny to me that you have somebody who basically reported it right away, and then they went to court and they eventually got a judgment. And you guys want to believe that, all of a sudden she's lying. She's not lying, guys. Trust me. Trust me. And there's nothing inconsistent in those interviews as it relates to the lawsuit. And again, if you think there is, I challenge you. We can go live, and you bring the inconsistent statement in the interview, and I'll bring the actual, I'll bring the actual lawsuit, and I'll prove to you that everything is consistent. And again, she didn't say that Black was an agent for Nicki and Kenny. However, I think that's game, because what's going to happen is that they're going to subpoena phone records. And once they subpoena phone records, they're going to be able to determine whether or not Black was in communication with Nicki and Kenny prior to contacting Jennifer. And any reasonable person is going to believe that if Black was talking to Nicki and Kenny, or either or, then prior to talking to Jennifer, any reasonable person is going to believe that there was some communication between Nicki and Black, or Black and Kenny, right? You know, so just stop it, guys, please. And then it goes on. Basically, this is the evidence of how Nicki told alternate versions of the story. She's saying he was 15, she was 16, in a relationship, but go AWF internet. Y'all can't run my life. Y'all can't run your own life. Thank you, boo. Right? You know, so she's telling alternate versions of the story, right? They were not in a relationship. She maintains they were never in a relationship. They knew each other because they were probably in the same neighborhood, or they went to the same school, whatever. And basically, she said he was known for hanging out across the street from the bus stop. She was going to school, and she went to the bus stop, and he came up behind her, and he basically put a weapon behind her back, and he forced her into a house. And then from there, he assaulted her. They were not in a relationship. So Nicki is out there telling different versions of the story, and that is causing emotional distress. And I think I also pointed out something. I don't know what this is, but again, I'm pretty sure it's explained in one of the declarations, and it's probably an exhibit of such. Again, if someone wants me to go through this, I'll go through this. Just request it and leave a nice little donation. Cash App, the non-lawyer. And here's a photo which I believe people are alleging belongs to Kenny, right? And allegedly, this is a photo of Kenny having a gun. And of course, according to his bond deal, he's not supposed to have guns, right? So Kenny is really setting himself up to be put into a lot of trouble if this is truly him. Now, I don't know if this is truly him. I don't even know what this is, right? But the rumor, the allegations that are out there is that Kenny has multiple pictures where he's throwing up gang signs, and multiple pictures out there where he has a gun. We just saw the one photo where he's hanging out with guys who are throwing up gang signs, but Kenny himself is not throwing up any gang signs, so I don't really think that photo means anything. And basically, this picture of the gun does not really mean anything, because for now, I'm just going to say for now it doesn't mean anything, because we have no idea who this is. This could be Santa Claus with a gun in his lap for all we know. I mean, there's no way to tell who it is. But of course, maybe there's more details in Tyrone Blackburn's or Jennifer Hughes' declaration that will basically tie this photo to Kenny. I don't know. If you guys want me to find out, drop me a donation and I'll do a detailed review of all this, right? And then it goes on, right? There's more clips, right? And this is where I'm going to say Jennifer made a mistake, right? I'm going to say that Jennifer made a mistake because I'm assuming that, and I don't know that this is right? Any and everything in this broadcast, this video, is alleged. Nothing is fact. Nothing is to be taken as true. It's just me reading the document and basically guessing as to what it is, right? So everything is alleged. So I don't know that this is Jennifer, but I think people are alleging that this is Jennifer, right? And they're saying they're attacking her. And I think this is what she's referring to, because Nicki is telling different versions of the story. She has to endure being attacked by basically people on the internet, right? So at this present time, from my understanding, so the chain of events are this. Nicki comes out, she tells alternate versions of the story. And because she tells alternate versions of the story, Jennifer is attacked on her social media profiles. And because Jennifer is attacked on her social media profiles, she comes out and she feels the need to try to defend her claim. This is a mistake. I believe it's a mistake, and I'm going to get into why, but we're first just going to look over some of these, some of this hate, this cyberbullying is what I'm going to call it. So they say, you're just a thief trying to make money off of Nicki Minaj and Kenneth's name, right? And we don't know who this person is, accept message request from AKA the villain. And then you are, effing sick. Me and 10K other people just watched Black T Blog's video, and the receipts are funny. You talking to your cousins, we're about to eat, and even that phone call I did with Jason Lee. It's all a matter of time. It's all a matter of time, I guess is what they're trying to say, before you get exposed. It's up to you. You just don't know it yet. Nothing regarding the U.S. Marshals was mentioned in your interview, and this is what I'm talking about. This is the trivial stuff, right? Because she didn't mention the U.S. Marshals in her interview, she's lying. But she mentions the U.S. Marshals in her lawsuit, right? This is the trivial stuff, and people are just ignorant, right? So this person goes, nothing regarding the U.S. Marshals was mentioned in your interview, and you're basically just contradicting yourself, ATP. Nicki is not dumb and works with the Kardashians' lawyers. You are sick. You realize that Ken has moved on, and if he actually making a bag for himself, and now you just want a piece of it too. Even your friend Black, why isn't he on the lawsuit? That's a good question. Like, I always thought that Black should be sued as well. The guy is playing you. And, they call her dumb and, watch and see, so on and so forth. So you really got issues, right? So she's getting all this hate text, and then she responds to some of it. Somebody says, basically, hope you die. And then they say, clout chaser, leave Nicki alone, right? And then she goes, that's an awful thing to say to someone you don't know. I'm going to pray for you. And FYI, I'm not bothering anyone, just speaking the facts, right? And this is why I kind of believe Jennifer, because Jennifer, when you listen to her and you listen to the way she speaks, she's not out there trying to be hateful. She's not out there trying to be disrespectful. She's just trying to explain what's happened to her. And she basically, wanted to stop, first of all. But you have to understand the lawsuit does a couple of things. The lawsuit, first of all, it addresses the assault that was done to her. Now, keep in mind, some courts reward restitution up front, and some courts don't award restitution. But according to the law, and the laws have changed, unfortunately, to allow people to come back and file civil claims after multiple years. That's just the way it is now. There's no way around that. You have, and when you look at her, she already has a judgment on her side, basically saying that this guy did something wrong. And because she has that, she's able to come back after all this time and file that. Now, what I don't like is when you have people that doesn't have anything, right? They don't have a court judgment, and they don't even tell their story then, right? They just wait 30 years and then they come back and then they file a lawsuit. And it's like, you didn't say anything 30 years ago. You didn't go to the police. You didn't do anything. So, I mean, I think people are just being a little unfair. But basically, that person responds, he's married to a millionaire, and now you want money. And she calls her a clown. You'll be exposed. Don't come from my queen, and lying on her name, right? So Nicki got some serious followers. And then she goes, that's not true, love. I wish they would have just left me alone and been happy. I don't want him, and I wasn't trying to hurt her. But did you have this energy with her when she lied on me? When she said I falsely accused him and I was white in a relationship with him? Those were lies. What did I do to them before she lied to me? I get, and then it just cuts off. So there's tons of hate, hate, cyberbullying is what I'm going to call it. that she's receiving. However, here's the problem with this, and I think she's going to have a problem with this in a lawsuit. Again, I think she has a strong lawsuit, and I think she could strip this part out. But the problem here that she's going to have is that she chose to go out there and do all those interviews. And again, when you do interviews like that, you give people the right to respond. You give the general public the right to respond. I think that if she would have kept her stuff private and she remained private and people started, chasing her down and saying stuff like this, then I think her case would be stronger. But the fact that she came out and she did those interviews, she made herself a public person. And when you make yourself a public person, you go out and you say things on the internet, people have a right to respond. I can imagine all the crazy stuff people are saying on my channel. Like every time I see something crazy on my channel, I allow people to, get a little jiggy on my channel and say things about me a little bit. But once it gets too crazy, once it gets too hateful, I ain't even finna lie to you. I'm finna delete that stuff and keep it moving, right? Because I don't want that negativity on my channel. I do videos about law and I give my honest opinion on stuff, and that's it. That's all I do. I don't hate on Nicki. I actually love Nicki. I don't hate on Nicki, and I have no ill will towards Nicki. I'm just commenting on the lawsuit, and Nicki just happens to be a famous person with legal trouble, and that's it. That's all it is to it. And if you look at my channel, you'll see tons of videos where I give my opinion on different people. So I'm not focusing on Nicki. It's just that Nicki is just the hottest topic. I think, yeah, Nicki and Cardi is the hottest thing right now. And it's the thing to be blogging about, right? So once somebody else replaces Nicki, then I'll blog about them. Maybe if Jamie Foxx is caught, doing something with Muse or something like that, I'll blog about Jamie, right? That's a joke. I'm not saying he does stuff like that. So that's what it is. So I don't know why people get mad at me and, talking to me crazy. But you can see, again, then she goes, yeah, so she made herself a public person. And because she made herself a public person, people have a right to, it's called freedom of speech, right? People have freedom of speech. And when they see something on the internet, they have a right to respond to it and protest. So that's why I think she made the mistake. I think she should have never done those interviews. And had she not done interviews, this particular claim would be a little bit stronger. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't have a strong lawsuit. I believe she has a strong lawsuit. She probably needs better lawyers, but I believe she has a strong lawsuit. But this particular claim of being harassed on the internet, in my personal opinion, is weakened because she went out and she decided to blog about this and tell her story. So let me know what you guys think about that part. So, and then we have some other things. I don't understand the context with all this. Hi, I am connecting you with Stephen, Iser Kendall's lawyer. Stephen, listen to what she has to say. Very helpful. And then it goes on. It's nice to speak with you, Ms. Chung. I would love to speak with you. Can you speak tomorrow? Blah, 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 blah. Right? I don't know the full context of this. Like I said, it's probably going to be in Tyrone Blackburn's declaration. And I haven't read that. If you guys really want me to go through this, let me know. And I'll try to carve out some time in the future. But I think the next couple of videos I'm going to do is probably going to be on Kenneth's bond conditions and also Kenneth's plea deal. That's what I'm going to focus on. And then there's yet more stuff, So that's basically it. Let me know what you think. Again, I was wrong. I gave my honest opinion on all this stuff at the beginning. That opinion was based on the process server not being a moron, and the process server telling the truth, and basically the process server serving somebody above the age of 18, or a high school student and above in the home. And clearly, I think after reading this, it doesn't meet any of those criteria. In my personal opinion, I think the process server was just a complete dumbass with this whole shadowy figure thing. Either the process server is a complete dumbass or Tyrone is a complete, screw up, because he should have never filed for a default judgment. Like if you are the process server and you come back and you tell me This time I saw a figure staring at me through the window. I knew I knew it was Mr. Petty because the security guard informed me. That's not, dude. You have to actually lay eyes on him. Now, if he said he saw Mr. Petty or he saw Kenny in the window, that's a totally different thing, right? If he saw him and he said, "Hey, look, I'm a process server. I have these court documents for you, and basically you're summoned to go to court. I'm going to leave them at your door." In California, that constitutes a service, proper service. So that would fly. But knowing that he just saw a figure, right? He just saw a figure in the window. Nah, dude, that doesn't count as process being served. So that's it for this video. Like, share, and subscribe. Please let me know what you think. Questions and comments below. Thanks for watching.